You shoot them and I'll answer.
I love it. So great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So let's begin our journey into your work. Retired FBI, author, former pastor, a lot going on. I want to begin with this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing our world, changing our lives. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach living and work today?
It so I remember very clearly for us, I was in the FBI and we had a search warrant that we are looking to execute. And this was, just the beginning of COVID. People didn't understand it, still probably don't. And, now we're trying to decide, well, do we go ahead and execute this thing? Like how we're going to handle this. And we end up moving forward and doing the search warrant, arresting the guy. Dog bit me during that one, unrelated to COVID, I think. But so for me, it's just been I'm an insular guy. We had a lot going on. I mean, I, you threw me off this question. I mean, the FBI had a hard time handling that because we are an in-person in the office group, and so we're staggering shifts. You're trying to find ways to meet informants in a parking lot, keep some distance and then get notes and then schedule time where you can come in and handle it that way. So it was quite an upheaval for us, and we're glad where we could get back to. I'm not worried about being on the SWAT team and sitting in a Bearcat with 8 other guys and then coming home sick.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into what you're doing today. I'm going to put you in front of 13-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids just wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize not only what you're doing now, but what you did before to make sense to their brains?
Yeah, I've had a few of those times in the junior high schools and stuff. One thing that I love doing, I bring all my SWAT gear, and the kids love that, and they love getting handcuffed and such. But I'll always hold up a flashbang and I'll say, "This is a flashbang. It does two things. Who knows what those two things are?" And you'll get a kid going, "Flash and bang." I'm like, "Yeah, very good." So I let them know. I mean, you tell the high points. I don't want to tell them about how everybody spends their day swearing at their computers because they're not working right. But there's a lot of high points to talk about with the kids of, these are some of the things that we investigate. These are some of the remarkable events, some of the dangerous things without getting too scary with them and just letting them know. I, I mean, I always try to promote the FBI. It's the greatest job somebody could have. So I want to give that impression, and hopefully someday later I get, one of those kids bumping into me. I had an occasion like that where a buddy asked if his son-in-law, who was a Black Hawk pilot, could talk to me about the FBI. I spent some time with him. 6, 7 years later, we're finishing a SWAT operation, and my buddy Travis is telling me he's going to go visit family. He tells me their name, and I go, Travis, did you talk to an FBI agent like 7 years ago on the phone? And here we are serving next to each other. Never could have imagined, but I felt honored by that.
Yeah. So did you always want to be an FBI agent when you were a kid? What was your dream gig?
I've had colleagues who'll tell me like their whole process of how they orchestrated everything, college careers, so that they could be in the FBI. And I just kind of did it on a whim because it sounded like it was cool.
Yeah.
My wife is way out of my league, and so I know that the pretty girls aren't going to go out with you unless you at least take a shot. So I figured, FBI, why would they want me? But my application was in process when 9/11 hit. I had studied Islam and outreach to Muslims. So we had an Al Qaeda problem. And I think that was likely part of the reason why the FBI took a chance on me and then immediately put me on a drug squad.
Wow. So take me back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised?
In Toledo, Ohio area,
Okay.
just outskirts, farm area, soybean fields all around. Grew up in a Christian family. We went to church every week. It wasn't a big deal as in, you know, hyper religious. It was just part of our lives. And then as I grew up, I thought, okay, I seem to know how to do ministry, how to read the Bible and tell people about it. Let me move into that field. and thought I'd be doing it for the rest of my life until health issues said I needed to pick something different.
So there had to have been a part of you growing up, seeds that were planted that allowed you to get into something like the FBI. I mean, there's a very small percentage of humans that will be on this planet that will ever experience the prestige of that level of law enforcement. What did you see? What was imbued in you early on that gave you this, not only this split zygote of FBI, but spirituality? It's a very interesting mix of abilities and curiosities and skills. How did this happen?
Joe, I'm putting split zygote down in my bingo card. I didn't think I'd get that one today, but great. Um, yeah, I I saw working in the church as obviously as doing God's work. I mean, that's clear. And then getting to work in the FBI, well, that's I was getting to do God's work as well. So it was impressed upon me early by my parents that, we do right. I remember further in the FBI and seeing more people and seeing people who are choosing wrong, that it was remarkable, like how simply my parents just said, you follow the rules, you do what's right. And so getting to be a part of bringing justice for people, I guess was always there. And I got to do a noble task in the church, and I got to do a noble task in the FBI too.
The one thing, growing up in Kansas City, we're in the Bible Belt, and even in Ohio, when you're in a rural area, and it's like you're brought up in this idea of a theology and a doctrine, and you don't really start developing your sense of spirituality until you experience it on your own.
Yep.
When was that moment for you where you really felt the divinity? You were, it was aside from what was told to you were you, and you felt it.
I I can tell you very clearly. I mean, when I was in growing up in church, I had a precocious knowledge of the Bible. So when the Sunday school teacher asked a question, always raising my hand to answer it. And then going into college, now it started to become personal. Now it started to become something that was meaningful to me. So uh, at that point, as I was seeing how effective I could be, that I had some abilities, I thought, okay, you know, it serves a good purpose, that's for certain. And I seem to be attuned to carrying out ministry. And so just went to the schooling, got better at it, learned more. And it wasn't until years later, I went through the usual path of youth pastor, assistant pastor until I was a senior pastor of a Baptist church. But it finally, when I was that senior pastor, I got to do ministry in the way that I thought was right. Like we were reaching out to people, and I set up the church with the core group to say, if we're going to make a mistake, we're going to err on the side of grace. Let God judge us for being too kind to people and welcoming.
So I got to know, in the annals of FBI, it's been dramatized on TV a lot. You have Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks. You got Scully and Mueller and all of this from X-Files. Was there anybody that was fictionalized in the FBI world that you were like, that's a hip cat. That's someone that I can look up to or emulate?
What real while I was in the FBI?
Well, yeah, or before you got in there, like at any point in your life, did those seeds subconscious or consciously get planted that made you think that's an ideal?
Well, I watched X-Files. I mean, well before there was TiVo. My wife and I would program the VCR,
Yes.
and then we go to Sunday night church, and then come back and watch it. So I love that. I wasn't under the impression that there was a real X-Files in the FBI. So, just getting in, I remember when I was first accepted. In fact, I was going through some old books. I had purchased a book on the history of the FBI before I got in. Like when I got accepted, and then there was that period of waiting to get in. I thought this is amazing. First of all, what's wrong with these people? They've made a mistake. And secondly, like I get to be part of a storied organization, and this is the elite law enforcement agency in the world, and I get to come on, and then I get to learn that okay, these are proficient people. No one is out of my league. We're all just well-intentioned, competent people. Some super smart, some maybe not as smart as me, and we all just work together creatively.
One of the highlights of my life in my 20s, when I was single and nothing tethering me down, I lived downtown off 11th Street in Kansas City in a place called Quality Hill. And the FBI building was up on a hill, and the
Mm.
confluence of all the highways were there. And I remember every day I would look out that window and I would think, I'm going to see something. Something's going to happen. A helicopter is going to land. Some Hollywood Ocean's 15 is going to unfold in front of me. I always loved looking at that building, hoping that there would be something that I would catch on the fly. Never
Yeah,
did.
yeah. Meanwhile, every FBI agent is like going in sulking, like I got to go to work today, as they see that building on the horizon.
Hoping for the coffee. So, who's been that heroic, inspirational force in your life that's allowed you to be you and to evolve into who you are today?
So my mother, she's passed 17 years now. But my dad's still around and we get together regularly. But my mom was the strongest influence in my life. We were very much alike, which wasn't good. But never bickered. It was just always two stubborn people, occasionally butting heads. But she was such a strong influence. Everyone who knew her loved her. She was the one who just taught me kindness. And while I had ministry practices, so much of that was just natural to me because this is what was characterized in my life. My dad's a great person as well, but my mother was the active one who was reaching out, helping people, getting involved in folks' lives.
So, between being a pastor and being in the FBI and seeing the levels of drugs and where human beings can go, you got a level of height and you got a level of low. In between that, how much did those worlds embolden your level of spirituality and who you are on this planet, where we might go after this?
Yeah, it opened my eyes. And I remember as a pastor and my dad telling me like, "Hey, you haven't been in the world. Like you're insulated. You're working in this. You're not out." And I thought, "Shut up, old man. You don't know anything." And then when I get in the I mean, it wasn't just like going into work in a corporate world where you meet more people. This was like seeing things that you have never seen because you haven't broken a guy's door down at 6 a.m. and had access to every corner of his house and his electronics. And so it opened me up to see what people are capable of. And some of that is good as well. Um, but I think the way that I have processed it is that the people that were with me in the church would come to me as a pastor and say, "Hey, I've done this wrong. I want to change. I want to be better." And then the criminals were those same people, but as they got into that wrong path, they just said, "I'm in. This is great. Let me keep going." And then we had to come to turn them around forcefully. So I see that anyone can engage in that. I worked with teen prostitutes, and you know, these are young girls who are engaging in something that any other woman would find horrific. I'm going to go out, I'm going to have relations with men that I've never met repeatedly. And to cross that threshold takes a lot. So you are either very, very desperate and or you've been broken. And I found both of those. And then on the occasion, you get to see them turn their lives around too. So
Yeah.
it's an honor being a part of that.
So I want to ask you a question that's just a little bit left of center. I would imagine in the realm of the FBI and even the CIA, there's things the public just don't need to know about. There's levels of things that just don't need to get out, and it's on the underbelly of what you're doing. And I'm curious, in this modern era, there's been this level of, hey, there's aliens, there's UFOs. And for so long, there was this shroud of secrecy. Like it was, I think the Nixon administration kind of put a fatwa and said, we're not getting involved with this. It's not real. But now it's like there's all these confirmed things. Why do you think the government has kind of been like, all right, it's happening, it's going down? What is your take on that theory?
I don't know. The majority of things that 99.5% of the agents and support staff are involved with deal with their community, and some of them start touching things cross country or international. And then there's the folks at headquarters who are a different FBI than the rest of us. They're politically involved. Their career paths are trying to get power, and they're the ones who make these decisions, interact directly with politicians. So I'm not sure why, why they would hide, why they would release. I know on our level, if things didn't come out to the public, yeah, they just didn't need to know. It seems trite, but you just like, hey, you have to trust us that we have checks and balances and we're trying to do the proper thing.
So speaking of getting people that you may have had an influence on years ago that would come up to you, say for instance you were at career day and someone became an FBI agent and thanked you. In your line of work, whether it's being a pastor or being in the FBI, what wonderful story do you have of somebody from way back that came back to you and their lives were changed by something you did?
Well, what's interesting is uh, I just reached out recently on Instagram to a, a friend of one of my kids who I think when she was 12, came over and wanted to wanted me to handcuff her and loved playing with that. And then I find out she's with Michigan State Police. And so I'm like, hey, look, I've got gear. I don't know what the guidelines are for you, but I don't need extra handcuffs anymore. Commemorative, you can keep these memories. I've got some things that you might be able to use. And so, I don't know that I was a part of that, but I just find it neat to see people moving on that way. I did have an occasion, I was a fit instructor. So when applicants came in, they'd have to be tested in the field on their push-ups, sit-ups, run. And I would always tell guys, hey, look, if you're in the military, watch your push-ups. Military guys, aren't doing them to form. And one of the guys then later joined the FBI, transferred back to my division, and became my SWAT team leader. And would always tell the story about how this a-hole was telling him, you military guys don't know how to do push-ups. And I vowed one day I'd come back and be his team leader. So it's fun to have those run-ins along the way.
So I'm curious, right now in America, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. We've slipped into a realm of surreal things that are happening between slush funds and things that are happening, like the weaponization of going after certain people for retribution. It seems like we've fallen off some kind of cliff. And do you feel like we're going to get to a point where we're going to get back? Has it always been like this and we just didn't know about it? Or do you think we're going to get back to some level of sanity and we're not going to have this level of vitriol that we're all feeling? Because we're all stressed by what's
Yeah,
happening.
I hope we do. I can speak for the FBI that um, there's been changes, but for the most part, the guys I talked to while some of this was going on and now afterwards are still the same people who say, I want to do what's right. I
Yeah,
want to follow the Constitution. And then as far as society goes, yeah, humans are resilient. Um, I'm, I think that the better natures that people have will shine through. It's easier to show kindness and openness to people than it is to keep up that hatred.
yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. I've had so many informants spending years getting involved in white supremacist organizations, and you get a group of 5, 10, 12, 20 guys just speaking hate and violence. And eventually they don't break up because they all hate each other and nobody does anything. So there's no profit in that, but there is profit in showing humanity to one another.
Yeah, for sure. So I find this interview, and when I get into podcasting, you're fascinating. There's a lot that's going on, and I've looked forward to talking to you. Is there anybody in the world right now that you find fascinating that you would love to talk to or interview?
Oh man, do you have them on? Are they behind the screen?
I don't know.
You, uh, uh, well, I'm trying to think. A few of them are passed on. Uh, I enjoy listening to economists.
Yeah,
Um, Dan Ariely is one of my favorite authors.
yeah.
He's a behavioral economist, and just picking the brains of like him or Nassim Taleb, the ones who have some insight into why people make these purchases.
Yes.
I'm making a purchase of my time in lieu of this, and that is economy. So that's something. Yeah, I guess one of them would be great to talk to.
Yeah, I
Do
love
you?
the social psychologists like Malcolm Gladwell. That
Yeah,
where all of these mitigating forces make you do what you do. It's fascinating, especially with the economy. I mean, if there's anything that's a absolute driver of what happens all the time on this planet, it's those decisions and things that happen, for sure.
right. And the behavioral economics is beyond just the monetary, the fungible purchases.
Right.
It is. Like I go through this with the criminals. Why is this young man who grew up in a decent home. His mother is a school counselor. Why is he choosing to be in this neo-Nazi group? Like, what is the purchase for him that he said, "Oh, that's a great buy," whereas you or I would go, I'm not going to spend my money on that."
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
It is. It's absolutely fascinating. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you walked into the room at your age now, and there was a film projector, and you click play, and there was a 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived, would that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Oh my gosh. I still I don't believe it. I'm 57. I
Yeah.
don't believe it. I look back and I think, I mean, to me, it was like when you're in it, it's like, one fish passing another and says, "How's the water?" And the other one says, "What's water?"
Yeah.
When I was in the FBI, I would try to take moments and just think, this is amazing. And then I'm very surprised that having been out and now I look back, that I'm even more struck by that was a remarkable opportunity because I skip over and I go back to that young kid or the pastor who was in his late 20s, early 30s, thinking, well, I'm going to do this for 50 years, so this is what I'm doing. And if somebody said, no, actually, in a couple of years, you're going to join the FBI, you'll be one of the lead guys on SWAT, and you'll be an instructor. You'll be training F. Hey, buddy, you're going to be training FBI agents how to shoot. And I'm like, I've never picked up a gun. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? That's I'm dumbfounded that I got to do it.
So, on that highlight reel, what are you the happiest or proudest of?
I've had a couple of significant cases that I was part of, and that's great to talk about. It's great for people to say, "You're amazing. You did this." And I go, "Yeah, I sure was." But the really impactful ones were smaller, where it was more intimate, like rescuing a teenage girl. I had a case that was part of a huge financial case I worked for years, and one part of it was uh, a disabled elderly woman who was being defrauded by one of the members of this group. And that strikes me more that I got to get involved and help her. It was the point that this subject had gotten her to sign power of attorney for everything. She thought that just meant, hey, when she dies, then he'll be the executor. He had power to take over her finances, to change her will. That's meaningful to me.
Yeah.
That just her, that old lady, might have saved her life.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that knows you in different capacities, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Ah, oh, I know who I am. I'm a very dull person. I've lived an amazing life by not like I'm the guy who gets the same thing at Chipotle every time. Doesn't matter. I'm going to go to the same restaurant. I do the same routines. Um, my perception of me is like I'm capable and I'm comfortable with what I got to do. I had buddies in the FBI who did, went overseas and took these courses and went here, and I thought, good for them. I don't want to move up the chain. I love being a field agent. I love being on SWAT. I challenged myself with a few things there, moving up to be instructor and some stuff, but otherwise, I was glad to do these things that inspired me in the first place.
So I'm going to ask you a fantastical question on two separate sides. First, if you could get into a time machine and go back into the annals of the FBI and be on one team, one assignment, what would you love to have been a part of?
man, the FBI is so different now than it used to be.
Yeah,
And I even got to see a change over 24 years. Uh, it would be interesting to be part of that young FBI that was small in force, where you might know everyone in the agency,
yeah.
going after the gangsters long ago in the 20s. I have a feeling that it was much different. It was just run and gun and stand out in the middle of a street and pull your gun. Um, Now we have different capabilities. We try to preserve safety of civilians and operators. So yeah, that'd be. I've shot a Tommy gun. Those are a pisser to shoot, so I don't know how I do there, but maybe I'll stick with a handgun maybe.
So during that time I was talking about when I lived downtown, I tried out for a thing called the Mafia Tour. And it was this tour that they took you around Kansas City. You would see Tom Pendergast's home. You would go by all these places, and it would end up in front of Union Station where the St. Valentine Massacre occurred,
Mm,
where it was a big shootout, and they were actually going to do it. Now, this was prior to the modern day. I don't think they could pull that off even in some kind of acting sense. But I remember like Kansas City was a heyday because we were the only ones. I remember during the pandemic that Kansas City was the longest running place of live entertainment and booze in the entire world because we were open during Prohibition. But
mm,
with that, there was so much going on. There's so much mafia gang activity that was happening here. You know, it was
yeah.
just a field day.
I would not want to go back into the COINTELPRO days. That's one I would feel a little conflicted about there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what about just the history of humans? If you could get into a time machine, what would be one event you would love to have seen with your own eyes?
Oh my gosh. I mean, being a pastor, there's some obvious answers, so
Sure.
I will bypass some of that. I think we generally don't acknowledge how many luxuries we have. I can imagine going back to any century and getting fidgety because, I don't have a phone or a radio or something to listen to, can't play my music. Uh, I think it would be. I enjoy watching TV shows like Deadwood, where it's 100 some years ago. It's not too far back. It's mid 1800s, and seeing how people thrived with grit and maybe made their own laws along the way. That might be a fun one to go to.
That was such a good show, man.
My
Such a good
one of my
show.
favorites. Yeah,
Yeah. I haven't heard that name in so long, and it was short-lived, but that they were just so good, all of them in that show.
yeah,
Crazy.
absolutely. I introduced my wife to it, and I said I've watched this 4 times, but I'll go for five. Here we go.
Yeah, yeah, that's great, man. So if anybody is ready for the next step, they want to reach out, they want to learn more, any of the good business in your world, where do they go?
They go to my website, which is preachertobreacher.com.
Okay.
And there they can find out I've got a book coming out in the fall that's called Irreverent, From Saving Souls to Chasing Sinners in the FBI. That'll come out in October. You can follow along, see when it's going to be released, get a copy, listen to my dulcet tones reading it in the audiobook. Gonna love that. Put people to sleep.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Babies will love it. Eric, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure. I appreciate your story today.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Yes, sir.